One of the things I noticed is that while there were a lot of methodologies about how to start a company, and there were a lot of methodologies about how to run a company that already existed, there was very little really that looked at this kind of scale-up phase, this look at this fast-growing phase when you go from very little, the typical garage scenario, to being like a corporation in a business park. Hello, I'm Joe Haslam and I'm a professor at IE Business School and I'm also the Executive Director of the Owners Scaleup Program. The Owners Scaleup Program is an executive education program specifically designed for owners of businesses who want to scale up. One of the things we've seen with the pandemic is that if one or two things go against you and you're a small company, you're very vulnerable. It's like being a flower in a desert and the wind comes and blows you away. So you're trying to move to being of a bigger size. So the Owners Scaleup Program is designed for companies that want to scale up. And we look across various areas in which your product can change, you're investing in operations, investing in people skills, and it's all of the things together that allow the company to scale up. Started through my own experience as an entrepreneur. When I was going back to the dot-com years, we were given $75 million and told to build a $1 billion company, which was an interesting period of my life. One of the things I noticed is that while there were a lot of methodologies about how to start a company, and there were a lot of methodologies about how to run a company that already existed, there was very little really that looked at this kind of scale-up phase, this look at this fast-growing phase when you go from very little, the typical garage scenario, to being like a corporation in a business park. In the beginning we had lots of things like accounting and legal and these kind of things, but as we went through the program every year, what we've determined is that there are certain things that you hire people to do that you don't need to learn, and then there are certain, what I call 10 or 12 things that every entrepreneur faces. And I like to say about the Owners Scaleup Program that we teach you more what you should not do rather than what you should do. And what by that I mean, which is to say that when you study scale-up companies, and I must have talked to 500 people who've scaled up companies, what you find is that the mistakes are common, but the reasons they're successful are different. So my analogy is like a race, that if you don't start 50 meters behind, you have a chance of winning the race. So I kind of go through with you the problems you're likely to hit, so that when you hit them, you're like, okay, yeah, Joe kind of mentioned this was going to happen. So now that it's happened, this is completely normal. The EdTech sector is really interesting. I mean, I guess coming from a technology background, in startups, we're always interested in technology is the thing we do, our competitive advantage. So I was always interested in EdTech. And one of the things that's really interesting is how we've changed the Owners Scaleup Program as the pandemic has hit and as EdTech has become more acceptable. We've now divided it into, it was previously all classroom based. And some of that, of course, was Madrid is a very attractive place to come to. So you're like, why not come to Madrid? Now, with the pandemic, we've divided it into 3 different parts. So the first part is all online. So what we've done is we allow people over a 4-week period to take, to learn at their own pace. And that's a really interesting kind of experiment. First of all, the videos are very short. They're 5-minute, we call them pills. You kind of get sent this 5-minute video, so you have me shouting at you from inside a screen. But the interesting part is that learning is very much by absorption, because you learn much better when you're in your happy place. That's the first part. This is all online short videos. And then we come together in a kind of an online period, which really is a kind of a question and answer forum. So you meet the other people who've been through the 4 weeks, and there's a professor. What we're really trying to do over that period is trying to have other people talk about their experience and perhaps inspire other people to take hard decisions. And then the final part is the in-class part, which is when we all come together physically. And that's fine because we all sort of know each other, through the online stuff. So people are kind of, comfortable with each other from the beginning. The final sort of week is very much, it's almost like a, gladiatorial thing, and very much like the sense of something really going on and the sense of, being part of a movement. And we try and build all those kind of things. So it's the sort of the 3 things that come together are the cumulative effect. And you mightn't kind of know what's going on in the beginning or in the middle, but by the end, everything kind of comes together. And you leave after the Owners Scaleup Program with a real kind of a sense of, I'm good enough, I have all the information, let's go forward. I think the biggest companies in the future will be EdTech companies. I think there will be an EdTech company as big as Facebook, whether it will be Coursera or whether, whoever it will be, I don't know, but that's the way, because there's an incredible thirst. I'm a judge in a competition in Latin America, and one of the things I'm happening is that almost all the startups that have been created are in the EdTech space. And what's happening is that there's a thirst for education, and that people are finding that that they just didn't have access, and suddenly there's like 3 billion people with smartphones. So I think EdTech is a huge opportunity for people, and I think that all institutions should be thinking, how can we personalize? I also think that we have to move away from this idea of credentialing as being the reason for education. I mean, I think educations will be useful as places where people will come together. I kind of describe it a bit like the Olympic Games or something, that you come together every 4 years to test yourself or benchmark yourself against how other people are doing. And that's very much how I see, but that the education is available, but that human context, humans motivate you to do some of the worst things that were done in history were always done because people had charisma. But if we can also use that in a positive way, in other words, if you can come together with people who have charisma, who can inspire you to be your best person. Well, I always talk about the engineering skills in Spain, which is to say that, in other countries value like lawyers and doctors. In Spain, engineers are valued as much as lawyers and doctors. There's a fantastic engineering tradition in Spain. So that's sort of the number one reason I always say that it's taken very seriously. You see hushed tones, like he's an engineer, it's like sort of very well regarded. The other thing about Spain, of course, or particularly Madrid, is that it's so international. I always say you don't have to go to China to meet Chinese people. There's 50,000 of them live in Madrid. So there's great access. I come from Ireland. It's a very small country, and there was literally no people who weren't from Ireland in my school, the diversity is really interesting to me. So I'm a great fan of cities. I'm a sort of a rich Florida acolyte, and I believe this in the creative class, and I completely love the idea that I can find people from different countries and hear their experiences. So I think that's what's very compelling about Madrid. I think that it's 6 million people from lots of places, fantastic engineering talent. I mean, it's a cliche to talk about the weather and the food and stuff like that, and of course it helps. But when I came here 15 years ago and I told people that I co-founded a company that raised 70 million and scaled to 250 people, it was like being a Martian, Whereas now I know in my phone I have 10 people who have done that, So Spain is changing, it's developing a confidence. I think what's happened is a lot of people have studied abroad, and that has made a big difference. Again, it's the insecurity thing, they talk about the imposter syndrome. Like every entrepreneur in Spain, for whatever reason, seems to have the imposter syndrome. So I'm very positive about the future, and I'm very positive about the ability of, you talk about the 3 Fs, which is football, food and fashion, and I think that there's fantastic, Spain is known for these things, and I think in the future we might have the education startups having the impact in the world that food, fashion and football has had.